Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to get up and speak on Bill 5. I'd like to just take this quick moment to, thank the independent members of this House who, during the course of my private member's Bill 211 from our previous session, who took the time to take my briefing on that particular bill. And this bill here, which of course is sort of a direct descendant of that. Without any political hyperbole, I get an email in my office literally every single day, or a call, or meeting somebody on the street when that bill, Private Member's Bill 211, failed last year. And those people are saying, how can we get this bill done? The allowing Henson Trusts is important to me, it's important to my family. We need to be able to get this done. That is why I am so extremely happy and grateful that our Minister of Community and Social Services decided to take up the cause and introduce Bill 5, which builds on the work of my private member's bill. And I'd also like to thank the support of my colleagues in the caucus in order to get this bill to the stage where it's at right now. Because when people ask, I'm so happy that we have a Minister of Community and Social Services who listens. Whether it was when we were dealing with PD Standard 8, where the community came out and said that this was not the correct way to go, the Minister listened. When it comes to supports intensity scale and the fact that that needs to be eliminated, again, I'm so proud to be part of a government and a ministry that listens to those concerns. And even last week, Madam Speaker, we all got up and applauded the Paralympians who were in our gallery and, and put them up there and said, look at what you can do. Look at the great work and spirit of competitiveness. And all throughout Alberta, there's individuals who are persons with disability that also say, look what we can do. We are like you. We want to be out in the community with you. And that is something that this bill, in a small part, will help with. Because frankly, those who are on AISH have this extra requirement when it comes to inheritances that no other province imposes on persons with disabilities. And that's something, Madam Speaker, is something that we needed to fix. It was a problem that I saw. It's a problem that members of my caucus saw, and it's a problem that our Honourable Minister of Community and Social Services saw. So I was happy to be able to have this bill come forward. So to talk a bit about the bill. I went out and did consultations, which I've talked about at length before in this House, and from those consultations, there was 3 key things that came out of that. The first part was to remove Schedule 2, Section 1, Part 4. And what that did is that it allowed a director of AISH to, at his or her discretion, decide whether or not a trust or an inheritance would be or would not be considered part of an AISH recipient's total assets, which creates a massive amount of uncertainty for families, for relatives who would want to leave some money or some assets to a loved one who happens to be on AISH. And that, Madam Speaker, is something that me, as somebody who's not on AISH, doesn't have to worry about should, say, for example, my parents pass away. And that is fundamentally unfair, and that is something that the community said loud and clear that we needed to fix. This bill, Bill 5, fixes that, and I am extremely happy that that is in the bill. The second of the 3 things that came out clearly in the consultation was that in order to have clarity is that the amount of money that could potentially be in one of these trusts had no limit. However, when the money came out of that trust, that would be subject to the normal rules of AISH, which allows for flexibility going into the future for perhaps any future changes that may happen. It also allows, Madam Speaker, to minimize abuses that might possibly happen in the system. And this was something that was the preferred way from the people we consulted with, that they would like to see this done. And we, during the course of the consultations, heard from everyone. We heard from self-advocates, AISH recipients themselves, as well as from their parents, and as well as from the accountants and lawyers who specialize in setting up these trusts and working with individuals in the AISH system. And lastly, Madam Speaker, This is all fine and good that if you have, say, for example, a parent or a relative passes away and that parent or relative has thought through that this money would go into a trust to help an individual on AISH. But as we know, Madam Speaker, not everyone who is a recipient on AISH started off on AISH. You know, some people, whatever their disability or affliction may be, sometimes that comes up later in life due to medical issues, or sometimes from an accident, Madam Speaker, which means that sometimes a parent or relative might have not had to think through the ins and outs of the AISH system when planning their estate. So the third part that came out during the consultations is that what was, as they termed it in the consultations, a wills done badly clause. That is perhaps not the correct term we're using in the bill, but that is essentially what it is. And what that says is that should an individual on AISH receive an inheritance or similar inheritance-like windfall, they have a full year to decide whether they want to take that asset just as it is, and then have whatever adjustments to their AISH that comes with that, or if they so choose, to be able to put it in a trust themselves, to be able to use it to save for their future and to use it to make their life better. The key part of that is that they have the choice to best plan for their financial future as best they can. You know, and I'd like to think that, thus far in the House, I think we're slowly moving towards support, at least at this stage of the bill, for Bill 5. And, as the member of Old Stitsbury had pointed out previously in debate, that I think we have a bit of a common cause on this, Madam Speaker, to make sure that individuals on AISH and persons with disability are treated equitably. And this part of the AISH legislation in particular perhaps comes from a different period in time, Madam Speaker. And that is why I'm so glad that, again, we have a minister and I'm part of a government that was willing to take action to correct this. I'm just going to take a moment to, since I believe this question came up previously, about what happens with these trusts. What happens if, say, for example, a trustee of the particular trust that decides to go rogue, for example, Madam Speaker. And that is, in fact, that particular concern is well covered in trust law. Families fighting over trusts and inheritance is something that is as old as the legal profession, so it is a well-worn area of legislation. There's clear guidelines for trustees, whether those are a family member or friend or a trustee law firm that's doing it. So there is very clear rules around that in other pieces of legislation. And, although asked about it during the consultations, that particular point was not considered to be a concern during the consultation process. So, Madam Speaker, I just, I want to end with, on a real positive note. This bill, as I mentioned earlier, there's not a day that's gone by where somebody doesn't email my office or talk to me on the street that we need to get this done. And this bill, Bill 5, will most definitely make life better for Albertans. It will help ensure that Albertans with disabilities are treated fairly and will support families that are planning for their children's future. I want to thank all of the self-advocates, families, staff that advocated for these important changes, both to me during my private member's bill and in the past as well. I encourage all members of this House to support this important bill at second reading, and I look forward to the continued debate and support of members in the House going forward on this particular bill. So with that, Madam Speaker, thank you.